Say hi. We're talking about Pixar movies today because I didn't plan ahead far enough. Hey, everybody. That's right, people. It's another tier list video. We're talking about Pixar movies today. Gonna be ranking them on the good old fashioned tier list there. I fell behind on some projects, so this is my way of filling the slot that's open on Friday. It's also 100 degrees today in the town I'm in, which is really, really rough because in order to record videos like this, I have to close everything down and not have AC running. So I'm going to become incredibly sweaty throughout the duration of this video. So get ready. We got a whole bunch of different things to focus on. Let's rank these Pixar movies. Okay, so we're using a tier list created by Yungar Yao, I believe, right there. Looks like a charming fellow, I can certainly say. Thank you for putting this together, Mr. The name I just said, Mr. Yao. I'm already sweating. This is gonna be, I'm sweating because I'm so stressed about these picks, but also because it is boiling hot in this room. Already the order I see an issue. Up is the first movie. Now, I do love Up. I think it's very, very good. I watched it, I think, pretty recently, too, and it holds up okay. I remember people complaining about how the age of the characters didn't make a whole lot of sense. I didn't really care. You know what? I think Up is a solid, I think it's a fun little story. I think it's a solid A. Up gets a solid A from Mr. Cow. I'm okay with that. I don't have too much to say about Up. It's pretty good. It's really creative. It's a neat little thing. Spawned some fun knockoff movies that I remember seeing in Redbox. And that's about all there is to say on the matter. But now we're moving on to a very, an iconic one, the first of the bunch, Toy Story, which I love Toy Story a lot. I don't have a whole lot of problems with like how Toy Story is written or like how it's put together. I really love the movie. It's not quite S for me. I think it's also going to be an A with Up. I'm a little bit worried now that all my movies are going to be like A's or F's, and then I'm not going to land anything in the in-betweens. Toy Story is an A though. Toy Story is an A though. I'm not ashamed of saying Toy Story is an A. That's a very, very good movie. It's not top tier Pixar. We'll get to that because the animation it's a little bit plasticky for the humans too, and that can be a little bit disarming. And I'm pretty sure, don't quote me on this, I'll put a clip up of it or a picture of it. I'm pretty sure all the children that attend Andy's birthday party are just copy and pastes of Andy, which I remember seeing as a kid, and it confused like the ever-loving shit out of me, and I was horribly afraid of what I was seeing. So if that's true, put the picture on screen. If that's not true, put a picture of a confused, like the picture of the monkey scratching his head where he can't find the thing. There we go. That's what happened. Boy, do I love doing these videos. These are fucking great. Now we have Monsters University. Monsters University is a tough one. Because I remember when I was a kid that I was like super excited about it, and then I saw it and I was like, eh. And then I rewatched it recently, and it's okay. It's you know what? I think Monsters University is a solid C for me. Oh, I accidentally pulled that thing up. It's a solid C for me. It's like good. I really like the animation in it, and they've got some fun characters and fun little things about college. But it's really not like a movie that we needed, really. And that's kind of what Pixar has run into in the future. But it's part of the reason why we're doing this tier list as opposed to anything else, is because I don't really talk about Pixar on this channel, although I love them. And I think it's fascinating to see like all the new tech they come up with and the new like approaches to 3D animation. It's really, really cool to me. But I feel like as time has moved along, they've moved more and more towards like sequels and safe bets when stuff like Up or Wall-E or all these really, really creative, innovative, interesting movies, like those were big risks because I mean they're out there, they're bizarre, they're really strange, and there really wasn't anything like Wall-E or The Incredibles or Ratatouille. They're complete own unique things, and Monsters University is like a branch off of its own unique thing, and I just can't really get behind that as like a super great thing. That as a super great movie rather. I keep saying thing, but it's just kind of all right for me as a sequel. Most Pixar sequels, I'm kind of like, apart from one, and we'll get to that. In fact, we're on to another sequel now, Finding Dory. Finding Dory, I keep pulling up that taskbar by mistake, my mistake. That's an F. Finding Dory stinks. That movie's terrible. I don't know what. I've seen it 2 or 3 times now, and I remember being a kid horribly excited to see Finding Dory because Ellen, my mother loved the Ellen show, and we would watch it every now and again, and she like would do bits where she talked about wanting to do Finding Dory and like a sequel movie to it. And so it was like I remember it very vividly from when I was a little kid. And then it happened, and it was just like another movie that was completely unnecessary. Monsters University had some fun bits to it, and like it was interesting seeing those characters, how they came up, and just kind of subverts your expectations a bit. Finding Dory just stinks. There's no reason this movie should have existed except to kind of bolster Ellen's ego, which, you know, probably doesn't need much bolstering these days. In fact, I think she'd be chomping at the bit to do Finding Dory 2, Finding Marlin, Finding Lightning McQueen, spin-off movie. Garfield, turn towards the screen. Jesus. Just looking away. We need people paying goddamn attention. All right, next up. Oh, the good one, Finding Nemo. I've never been a huge fan of Finding Nemo. I liked it a lot as a kid. I had the terrible PS2 game, I remember. I'm going to say it's a B for me. And probably a B just for the industry, because Finding Nemo, when that came out, it was huge. I think it did about $1 billion. I'll put the total on screen of what it actually did at the box office. Humongous success, and it's the reason why we have so many like rip-offs of it out there. So many fish movies that you'll see. It's because of Finding Nemo. It blew up, and like you could just have like a blue filter and make them underwater. Fish models are kind of easy for people to get their hands on and make a rip-off. So it kicked a lot of interesting things off in the world of animation, and it's not a half bad movie either. It's just not like crazy for a Pixar movie. I mean, it's about fish. It's got some really great animation in it with like the water effects and whatnot, and for that matter Finding Dory does too, and that's one thing that's a through line with all Pixar movies, great animation. But we're not ranking them based off just their animation, because of course they're all going to be pretty equal on that. We're ranking them as movies as a whole, and Finding Nemo is pretty dang good. It's a nice story. It's not like groundbreakingly unique, but it's interesting. And I just peeked at the next one on the list, and I hate this next one. Good God. Cars 2. When I was a kid, I hated Cars 2. As an adult, I hate Cars 2. That's an easy F. Don't even have to think about it. It's just an awful movie. It's basically a Larry the Cable Guy movie. It's not even really a Pixar written movie. It feels like Larry the Cable Guy in a movie. And I've sat through one of Larry the Cable Guy's movies. I think it was Health Inspector. One of the worst things I've ever seen in my entire life. I didn't laugh a single time in that movie. I didn't laugh a single time in Cars 2 for that matter. But like in a dedicated Larry the Cable Guy movie, good God, I despise them. And I subjected some of my friends to that. I like to show my friends terrible movies, and like, you know, sometimes they're funny, sometimes though they're Larry the Cable Guy, and they're just god awful. And that's kind of what Cars 2 felt like to me, was Larry the Cable Guy helming a film with an amazing animation studio behind him, which should never happen ever. It's kind of like what is happening with Adam Sandler with Hotel Transylvania, where I really like the animation in those movies, but the substance is just kind of middling. It's not as bad as Cars 2. Hotel Transylvania isn't as bad as Cars 2. Cars 2 is god awful. There's no redeeming qualities about that movie. They're like secret agents. If you don't know the plot, the first Cars movie is about like, you know, racing, like NASCAR. The second one is about Mater being a secret agent while Lightning McQueen is racing. It's beyond stupid. It's such a reach to sell more toys. It's horrible. And finally, we have a good one. The Incredibles. I adore this movie. Brad Bird, I believe is his name, the creator of it. I remember when I was a kid, I was like fascinated by this movie. I genuinely loved it then. I genuinely love it now. Oop, and my glasses a bit. But there was something about being able to see the special features and the behind the scenes, because I don't know if I just found them on YouTube or if they were on like a DVD I had. This was like one of my first exposures to like behind the scenes of animation and filmmaking. So Incredibles to me, like, great movie across the board, but also because of the you know, how it got me into animation a little bit and got me like fascinated with like storyboarding. I remember seeing storyboards for it and being like, why the hell do you do that? Like, we have a script, we can kind of, but now that was like my first exposure to that sort of thing. I believe it was the first time I ever saw like a behind the scenes of anything was The Incredibles. I probably saw a couple of things. Maybe I remember FXX. They would play like Real Steel and like Rambo movies or maybe Alien movies, and I would get to see behind the scenes on that. that was kind of neat, but I think Incredibles was the first one. Fantastic movie. Love it. I'm kind of messing up my crop a bit. This video is pretty last minute because I'm going on a trip here tomorrow, and so I'm kind of running out of time to get something put together to upload. Now my crop's a little bit messed up, so bear with me for this one. I know this one's a bit messy, but we got to talk about these movies. We got to talk about Ratatouille. I love Ratatouille. It's fantastic. It's unique. It's set in a location we don't get to see very often. It's got great music, great performances, great story. I love it. I don't really have any problems with this movie. I can't really think of one. Similar to The Incredibles. There's just, it's a perfect script. It's a unique premise. It's just great. S tier all the way for Ratatouille. What a wonderful, wonderful movie. Okay, next up. Oh, God. Okay, The Good Dinosaur. I remember being somewhat excited for this movie because I love dinosaurs. I adore them, especially as a kid. I loved dinosaurs. And I was expecting like hyper-realistic dinosaurs done by Pixar. And what we got was just nothing. They're like Gumby looking. You can see this idiot's face. Terrible. This movie, I mean, it's probably fine for like really little kids, but this was like the first time when I saw a Pixar movie, I was like, I might be getting too old for this because it really did feel like it was designed for a completely different audience. All these other movies, I could see sitting down and watching it as an adult or a kid. The Good Dinosaur is like just a kid. I cannot see watching that as an adult and enjoying it. F all the way. No redeeming qualities whatsoever in my mind for the one time I watched it. Maybe I'll have to watch it again, but I really just didn't enjoy it at all. Okay, let's keep it moving. It looks like, the first Cars movie. I always hear people say that the first Cars movie is just Doc Hollywood, which if you haven't seen Doc Hollywood, it's basically the first Cars movie. And if you haven't seen the first Cars movie, it's basically Doc Hollywood. Yeah, they're right. Basically, it's the same kind of premise and setup. But the problem with doing a Doc Hollywood movie is like in Doc Hollywood, Michael J. Fox, I believe, is a doctor. He wants to go be a big time plastic surgeon, but his car breaks down in a small town. And he basically learns that, you don't have to have the big city high rollers life. You can have this little small life in a small town where you know everybody. And like, it's the same sort of story. Like the big city folk learn to live in the small town, falls in love, that sort of thing. Except the problem is there's no sequels. Oh, my laundry's done. Jesus Christ. This video is something else today. Anyways, now that my laundry's done, back to Cars and Doc Hollywood. You can't have a sequel to Doc Hollywood for that point to really land. Like, you can't. And there's a sequel to Cars, so it kind of cheapens the whole thing they're going for there. Especially because I think in the second Cars movie, they, like, kill off his, like, mentor on top of that, which kind of, like, muddles the message too. So I'm going to give... the first Cars, I'm going to give a C. I'm comfortable with that. I don't really want to go any higher with it just because it really, as a movie, feels like an advertisement more so than any of the other Cars. Well, any of the other Pixar movies. All the Cars movie feels like advertisements. But this one especially felt like it was designed specifically to sell toys just because it didn't have quite as much thought or creativity when compared to literally any other Pixar movie, really. Maybe apart from The Good Dinosaur, because I don't even know what they were thinking with that. It's like Ice Age, but with an ugly, uncharismatic dinosaur. So I'm comfortable with C on that one. It's not terrible. It's just like Monsters University, but it's not like really, really good Pixar. Okay, Cars 3. Cars 3 is like nothing to me. I have a little story about Cars 3. I went with some friends in high school. They were very much car guys. I'm not a car person at all. And when I say car person, I don't mean big fans of the movie. I mean they like working on cars, like mechanic types. I'm not that kind of guy. You know, my thing is, video editing and making content here on YouTube. Not quite up my alley, but I went and saw the movie with them. And I remember two of them walked out at a certain point because they hated it so much. I don't remember what the reason was. It may have been that, like, spoiler alert for Cars 3. Light spoiler alert for Cars 3. Lightning McQueen, like, gives up and lets someone else race for him in the movie, which is kind of odd. Again, muddling that message further. There just isn't anything I would call memorable about this movie. I can't think of a single moment in it where I was like, wow, that was really cool. That was really interesting. You know what? Except for one, there was one particular effect. I remember because I saw it on Pixar's like a forum of some sort, an animation forum, where they did this effect where Lightning McQueen's paint peels away, like like a time lapse of it rusting away or something to the new paint. I don't remember the exact clip, but it was really, really interesting to see the tech behind that. That's one thing I could say that's memorable about that movie. But as a movie as a whole, I just have no reason to ever watch it again. It's not awful, but I think D is probably a safe spot for it. Just because it's like I don't want to watch it again. I could watch the C movies again, but D and below, I just have no interest in going back to those ever again. D less so than the F, of course, because like I can at least appreciate some of Cars 3. The bottom three right now we have the list just feels so empty and voidless and borderline a little bit cynical with Cars 2, because Cars 2 was like really pushing to sell more toys. Now we have Kevin Spacey's A Bug's Life. I always forget about this movie because they had like the battle with ants or whatever. That's one of the main things that I remember when it comes to Bug's Life, because that was so interesting to me as a kid. Whoops, I did put it in B. I'm not sure if it's a B. But it fascinated me as a kid because like the idea of like espionage where someone steals a movie idea like that, it was just really, really cool. To hear, and that was one of my first exposures to that, to like the industry of filmmaking almost. As a movie as a whole, I mean it's Bug's Life. It's it's a movie. It's really not anything remarkable. I kind of enjoy it. The animation of all the Pixar movies, I think this one holds up the worst. Just because I don't like how some of the bugs look. I don't know. You know what? I think it's safe putting it at C because I wouldn't turn down watching Bug's Life, but I wouldn't like actively seek it out. If I had to watch Pixar movies, of course, top of the list. I think C's a nice soft spot for it. I don't like Ants as much as Bug's Life, but they're both like, if I were, maybe I'll do DreamWorks at some point if you guys really like these videos. But yeah, I can't get too behind Bug's Life these days. I remember when I was a kid, I went down, when I like first got a laptop, one of the first things I searched on it was actually like a sequel to Bug's Life, and I was like coming up with my own fan fiction for what a sequel to Bug's Life could be, because I think I watched it recently. It's just bizarre. Little memories like that. That's what these Pixar movies hold for me, is like these just little moments from my childhood where I was incredibly fucking stupid and didn't know what I was talking about when it came to movies. I was like, they're going to do 30 Toy Story movies, one every year, which back then that's preposterous, but now with how much Marvel content they roll out, like, I know animation takes way longer, but good God. Well, I mean, those Marvel movies are basically big animated projects now, too. They're kind of half and half with how much VFX goes into it, which that's a video for another day, too. I want to talk about that stuff, too. The whole Marvel VFX, SFX guys who are just getting destroyed by that workload. I think they had over 100 hours, or maybe, even if it's not over 100 hours, maybe over 50 hours of content already in Phase 4, which is way too much. Anyways, a little tangent there, just Disney stuff. But Bug's Life there, not much to say about that one. Incredibles 2. It's Incredibles 2. I saw this on my brother Luke's birthday, his 21st birthday. Shout out to Luke Stevens on YouTube. This movie was not good. I did not like it. I wish I did, because I think Brad Bird came back for it, but it just, again, it felt kind of soulless. What I was hoping for was like a sequel where, they're kind of grown up and we have a whole new, like, they're grandparents now and it's not a super family, it's like an extended family tree. Like, you could do something interesting with that, but it felt like the marketing team got their fingers on it a little bit too early, because they're like, oh, no, we need like comic relief. Use the baby as comic relief. It felt really cynical and really, really corporate, whereas the original Incredibles was like, it felt genuine. It felt like a genuine, interesting story about a superhero family. This one, though, I mean, I maybe, it's not as bad as these ones, I would say, because there's some really fun action sequences. There are some funny parts. We got that great Math is Math clip from Mr. Incredible. I think it's a D for me. It's a beautiful movie. I remember really loving the visuals of it and some of the design, but honestly, like the twists and the overall story, it wasn't that good. I just, maybe I'll do a dedicated video on Incredibles 2. With how much I love that original one, I was really expecting Something new and innovative. And that's what you'll notice a lot with these Pixar sequels, again, apart from one, which we'll get to. They do the opposite of what made the original popular. They don't innovate. They're building off something that innovated, something that was creative, but that you're basically yes-anding at that point, which is fine. Sometimes when you yes-and in improv, you can get something really, really great, but this is an improv. This is someone crafted something incredible. Like they put together like a perfect script for something like Ratatouille or The Incredibles. And then someone goes, yes, and let's do this, and just throws it out there as like a light, unstructured idea. And that's how you get a lot of these sequel movies. At least that's the way I think about it. Because I just don't see the amount of thought like going into it as much with the sequels. And I feel like a lot of people can relate to that too. But I'd love to know in the comments below what you guys think a lot of these Pixar sequels. What you think they're doing right, what you think they're doing wrong. Like I said, there's one that's good. Is it up next? No, it's WALL-E. WALL-E is, I believe it's my favorite Pixar movie. I believe it's my favorite Pixar movie for sure. I adore this movie. There's so many stories I could tell about it where I was like, I remember watching it on New Year's Eve. One of the first times I was allowed to stay up till midnight. I wasn't allowed to stay up till midnight on New Year's Eve until I was like 8 or 9. I think maybe 10, whatever. I think WALL-E was 2008, so I was probably released on video. Yeah, I was 8 or 9 probably. And that was one of the first times when I went and saw WALL-E in the theaters. I was like petrified of movie theaters. I was terrified of them because they were, pitch black, and I was scared of the dark. I was a little kid. And WALL-E was like the first movie I saw where it like kind of took me out of that as a kid. A lot of milestones. And on top of that, not only is this movie beautiful, it's got a unique story, it's got unique characters, it doesn't have a whole lot of dialogue, it's so visual, and it knows exactly what it's doing. And it doesn't need any sequels, it doesn't need anything extra. It's just so well put together and well structured. The characters are all interesting. They do weird, unique things too, where they have By and Large, that system, which is like a commentary like that in a kid's movie is interesting, and then commentary on like the laziness of humanity if we have like everything that we want when we go up into space. And they use like borderline mixed media with like the live action president, the live action pictures of people. That stuff blew my mind as a kid. I didn't know you could do that. All right. I saw Roger Rabbit and I was like, that's really, really cool. But in WALL-E, it's like 3D animation world with little real things sprinkled into it. And that blew my mind as a kid, seeing stuff like that. And they're little. Keep in mind, they're really small moments in that movie. But I adore it. I adore WALL-E. Maybe I'll restructure this so my S can only be like 2 movies, but we'll get to that in a minute. WALL-E is top notch. If I were a rich man with $1 million or 2, that's this movie, right? I think that's this movie. I don't remember if that's what that song's from. Yeah, that's what it's from. I wouldn't have nothing if I didn't have you. It's either an A or an S. This is a tough one for me. I love Monsters Inc. It's so unique. It's such a great premise for a movie. I mean, the characters are perfect. I love John Goodman. Gotta love Billy Crystal. Great performances in the movie. Yeah, just a fantastic movie. It's just got there's so much personality behind it too, with all the designs. This was another one where it got me into animation more, looking up like screen tests and whatnot. If you haven't seen the screen test for Monsters Inc. or like the initial ideas, it's really cool, really, really interesting. And they like fur animation, how that worked. They have like a test for it you can see online too. Really, really interesting. It's an A. You know what? I'm going to put it in S for now. It might go down to A. But as you guys can see, kind of the era I grew up in and how the nostalgia I have for some of these movies. Up is an A. I know some people were probably expecting Up to be an S, but it's just a little bit lower for me just because of that age thing. And I didn't love the comic relief kid or the dog Doug. But yeah, the ones I have in top 4, good God, if you haven't seen any Pixar movies or you want to do like rewatches, exactly in that order, like that you'll have a fantastic time. What's up next here though? What do we, Inside Out. I didn't like Inside Out all that much. I just, it was fine. It wasn't groundbreaking to me. Like as an idea, it felt like Inside, I'm putting it in C for right now. Maybe I'll move it up or down. We'll see. But Inside Out is like an idea, isn't inherently creative for Pixar, but it seems creative. It's like false creativity. It's an idea pretty much everyone has had, but you know, Pixar, and Pixar took it and was like, okay, we'll give it like the Pixar twist a little bit. And there's great character designs, there's great performances in it. There's like really interesting moments throughout the movie. You know, I think I'm okay with moving it up to a B actually, because I remember some really great emotional moments in the movie. I remember some, and like the character designs you just see right there on the poster. They're all really unique and they stand out and they're really interesting and they fit for exactly what they're supposed to be. It's not the best Pixar movie. It's not like I'm putting it on par with Finding Nemo's rough because Finding Nemo is really really good. Maybe you know what we'll do this. Finding Nemo goes to A. We'll leave Inside Out alone at B. And I think I'm comfortable with that as a list. I'm a little bit tempted to move Monsters University up to B because I'm now remembering Monsters University has a point where they go into the human world and they have to scare children in a summer camp. And that sequence is so goddamn cool. I completely forgot about it. That's a really, really, really cool sequence for Monsters University. It's towards the end, but still, it's cool. There are some parts to like about Monsters University. Maybe, you know what? I'll move Monsters University up to B. We'll structure it like that for now. But yeah, Inside Out, those two movies for sure I feel like are perfect for B. Because I remember liking moments of it, but at the same time, it's like, you're not being incredibly creative here. It's not like everything in S tier was like, when those movies came out, I remember being blown away. I remember being like shocked at the creativity. Same with, you know, Toy Story, Finding Nemo, and Up to an extent. But those top four really were just insane levels of quality and creativity from Pixar, and they pushed it with their tech. It's just really incredible. But we got to keep moving. We got to keep moving here on to Coco. I only saw Coco once, so my opinions on it aren't super strong. I liked it. I didn't love it. I really loved the animation in this movie. The skeletons weren't great looking. And I remember the Book of Life, I believe, came out around the same time, which was a good movie also, except that movie was a jukebox musical, which if you don't know what that is, it's what George Lucas did with a movie called Strange Magic. It's where you're a musical, but it's, you know, jukebox. It's music that's been put out by other people, and you kind of fit it within the movie in its own context. It's an interesting idea, but I've always hated it. I think it sounds tacky and like it really shoehorns in a lot of fake sentimental moments and songs. So I don't love that aspect of the Book of Life, but I think I should specify I'm talking about the Coco is not a jukebox musical, but the Book of Life is a jukebox musical. And it was pretty good other than that fact, and I think I've wound up liking it more than Coco. But keep in mind, I haven't seen these movies in a while. Coco and the Book of Life specifically. I've rewatched some of these for this list. I'm gonna put Coco. But they do the dumb villain twist. They do the slight spoilers for Coco because you'll be able to see it coming from a mile away. They do the same exact thing they do in Monsters Inc., where it's the classic. The villain didn't know they could hear him. That's the way that movie ends. So you know what? I am going to keep it in C because I hate that. I hate it. I didn't mind it as much in Monsters Inc. because when I was a kid, I hadn't really seen that before. But in Coco, when they use that, I had already seen that in another Pixar movie. Like chronologically, like you shouldn't be repeating beats and stuff like that. You should try to be pushing to do something different, which, speaking of Disney, they don't really push to do stuff different so much anymore. They're really, really formulaic when it comes to their movies. So I'm comfortable with C. You know what? It's probably on the line between C and B for me, honestly, because there's a lot of great stuff in that movie. But yeah, Book of Life, that's one maybe I'll have to talk about again, because that, apart from being a jukebox musical, I remember really, really liking that movie when I initially saw it. But moving on, we can go on to what's this here? Toy Story 2. I love Toy Story 2. This movie is fantastic. I think I've watched this movie like 3 or 4 times this year. I've got a lot of nephews. I think maybe I picked it up a few times there. Just an awesome movie. I think I'm gonna put it in S. I'm gonna put it in S. Between Al's Toy Barn and the other Buzz Lightyear and getting to see Zurg and Stinky Pete as a villain and that sequence in the luggage claim area, like where all the luggage gets sorted, that was so cool with the plane. Like a huge set piece to end a Toy Story movie on. And that was something Toy Story movies always did like really, really well, was having these massive, amazing set pieces at the end, despite the characters. And it fits within the context of the world too. It's just so cool across the board for Toy Story 2. Like you hate your villains, you like your heroes. It feels like an adventure too. Some of these other movies, I know Up definitely feels like an adventure. But Toy Story 2, it's like, oh, we're looking for our friend. Like, that's a really fun adventure movie. And these toys, like, they set the stakes pretty high, too, when they're crossing the street. Yeah, I love Toy Story 2. That's an amazing movie. Really, really great script. Really, pretty dang good animation on top of that, too. I know it's a little bit dated, but it's definitely a step up from the original Toy Story. I definitely like it more than the original Toy Story. So I'm cool with keeping it an S, because I like the original Toy Story, but Toy Story 2 really, really nails it in almost every area for me. Speaking of Toy Story 2, it's Toy Story 3. It's good. It's interesting, to say the least. I liked a lot about it, just because it does confront, like, you're moving on from your toys. Frankly, I think Toy Story should have ended here, because keep in mind, I saw Toy Story 4 really, really recently. And I was okay with it. We'll get to that one in a minute, though. Toy Story 3, a big set piece at the end, too. That was really cool. I remember them doing Lego sets for it. That's completely irrelevant, but it just popped back into my mind after looking at this poster. There's a lot to like in it. Lots of a fun villain. The daycare is an interesting setting. It pulls the emotional strings, the heartstrings, a good bit, because it kind of forces its audience to grow up and then go and see another Toy Story movie a few years later, but we'll get to that in just a minute. The problem is with Toy Story 3 is that the sequel cheapened it, and that's why I brought it up twice now. It did legitimately cheapen the impact, so I'm going to put it in B, and that's why these sequels are a dangerous game. Rarely does a sequel ruin the initial movie. In fact, I can't really think, but there's probably a few instances where a sequel ruined the initial movie for some people. I know, like the last season of a TV show. When Game of Thrones aired its 8th season, like, some people couldn't even go back and rewatch the show because it was, like, tainted for them. It was ruined completely. And Toy Story 4 didn't quite do that for Toy Story 3, but I felt like such a strong ending for all these characters. We just didn't need a Toy Story 4. I'm sure Disney needed it to sell toys and to sell video games and all different sorts of things for marketing and merchandising. But I think as far as like a story goes, I think Toy Story 3 is a perfect end. So if I could put Toy Story 4 out of my mind, then Toy Story 3 would probably be like an S for me, honestly. But knowing that these characters carried on, it's such a perfect end, and then it kept going. So you know what? I'm gonna bounce it up. I'm gonna bounce it up to A. Just because it did have a lot of great emotional moments. It's just a shame it didn't end with that. It should have ended with that. There's no reason we should have done a Toy Story 4. There just isn't. Who gives a shit about Woody's character? He's a toy. We'll get to that one in a minute, though. I think next up is Brave. Brave is an interesting one. By interesting, I mean not very good. I should specify. It's got amazing animation. Like, the hair physics in it are crazy. I remember when I was a kid, I was blown away by how good it looked. And also when I was a kid, this came out around the time I was probably, I want to say it was 2012. I can't quite remember when Brave came out, but I remember my sisters all did Scottish dancing. And we were kind of like engulfed in Scottish culture there for a while. My family was. So this one hit in a different way because it is about Scottish culture a good bit. It's set in Scotland, of course. But as a movie, like, I remember the one part that really stuck with me was the part where the evil bear attacks. And that's about it. I really, it's not very good. It's just, as far as the story goes, they could have done something probably a bit more interesting with it. And I liked parts of it. But, it's probably, I'll put it in C. It's not incredible. I don't have incredible memories of it. But I liked a good few parts of it. So C is just fine. Onward. Good. Oh, I put Onward in D by accident, which might be fitting. It might be fitting for Onward. Onward is like right where I kind of stopped caring about Pixar movies. I kind of like put them out of my mind. You'll see with the last few we go through here. Onward was fine. I don't really have anything else to say about it. I like the character designs. The voice performances were fine. I mean, Disney is milking the ever-loving shit out of Chris Pratt and Tom Holland. And they're both in this movie. It just... there wasn't a whole lot there that I could hold on to when it came to Onward. I couldn't really get into it all that much. You can do a good bit with that premise of like people giving up magic in this fantasy world because our world is more convenient, and then like going in to find that out. It felt muddled. Everything about it felt unfocused. It's like a story about two brothers and wanting to find their father, but also this world. It's just it needed to be focused more, I think, because as it stands, it's like a really interesting world with really interesting characters, but like the story and the emotional beats in those moments just didn't really land for me. And the climax of the movie, like the final like fight, it just wasn't really great or that memorable. And like the final, I guess the resolution to the character arcs was neat. It just wasn't fantastic to me. I think you could have done more with it, especially with that world. And maybe they will. Maybe we'll get an Onward 2 and they'll do more with that world. That's one where I would genuinely want to see a sequel just to expand upon it, because I do think it's genuinely interesting as a world. I don't know. Yeah, I'll put it in. I think it's another C for me. It's probably another C for me. I was kind of leaning towards D, but yeah, just as a world, I feel like it could be an S with enough focus. No problem being an S with enough focus for me, but it just didn't have it in Onward. So I'm comfortable with C. Next up, I've spoken of this one. I'm going to keep it brief. Toy Story 4 didn't need to exist. It had some interesting moments to it. But at the same time, it's like Toy Story 3, moving on from your toys, growing up, that sort of thing. Toy Story 4, the toys are sentient creatures that are like having relationships with one another. As an adult, I cannot connect with that whatsoever because they're toys. I mean, they're made out of plastic. We could melt them. Really, I mean, like in the third movie, they almost get melted. I don't have many nice things to say about Toy Story 4 just because I don't think it needed to exist. It's not a bad movie. It has great animation. It has some fun characters. It has some fun moments. And the story isn't even that terrible. It's just, we didn't need it. It didn't need to exist. It's not it's going in D for me just because it's not a necessity to watch. It's not something you need as an audience member, as a fan of the Toy Story movies. You don't really need to watch it. You can kind of just move on from it. If you have, let's say, 4 hours and you got to get through, each movie's an hour and a half. It's like, well, do you watch some of Toy Story? Yeah, no, don't even worry about it. Well, between bathroom breaks, the 4 hours, just watch the first 3. Forget about Toy Story 4. Not worth it. Now we're into some tricky territory because I've only seen 2 of these movies. So we'll start with the one I haven't seen, and that's Turning Red. Ranking it based off not seeing it, not a good way to stay uncontroversial on the internet. So I will rely on a tweet I saw where someone said it didn't bring up 9/11. Do you guys remember that? The guy that was like, I think someone did a YouTube video where they're like, for a movie set in 2001, they really should have brought up 9/11 more, or something along those lines. So that's S for me. That's that's an S rank for me. You gotta bring up, if you don't bring up 9/11, chances are, no, it's an F. Where would I put that? What's funnier for Turning Red? I just spat everywhere. I can't rank a movie I haven't seen. Can I just put it back down here? Okay, I'm not gonna do that. That was the most hilarious thing I'd ever seen, though. Someone complaining that they didn't bring up 9/11 enough in this movie. I remember there's so much outcry about it. I'm sure it's a fine movie. I haven't seen it. I'm sure it's a fine movie. Soul was one I saw. Soul was one I was excited about and incredibly underwhelmed by. It was a little bit too kiddie for me. I couldn't really get behind it. I love music. As you can, I got my piano right there and vinyls lining the walls. I love music. I love making music. I love learning about music. I love things about music. But this one just didn't really land for me. It's not like I don't want to ever watch it again. It's still got like redeeming qualities, but I think C is fine for me with Soul. And I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but Luca is kind of the same way. Actually, not really the same way. Luca's good-ish. I just don't ever want to watch it again. I don't care. I don't care about these new ones as much. There isn't as much nostalgia there. There isn't quite as much creativity. Luca kind of has a bit more creativity than something like Soul. I'm going to put Luca in D, not because keep in mind, F movies I would say are bad and you should never watch them. D movies are like maybe once. C movies are like, okay, not the best of Pixar, but still worth watching. And then up from there, you know how it goes. So putting Luca in D, I know some people might be like, oh my God, how could you do that? That's ridiculous. It didn't resonate with me in a major way. And I'm sure that differs from a lot of people because I know a lot of people really like that movie. I know a lot of people really liked a lot of these movies. So let me know what you think in the comment section below. That's where this tier list ends. That's it for it. That's Pixar. Looky here. That's what we've landed on. And as for last minute adjustments, if there's anything I want to change, I don't really think if I can move the Good Dinosaur lower. It feels wrong having the Good Dinosaur on the same level as Finding Dory and Cars 2, because I can sit through those two movies. I can't really sit through the Good Dinosaur. It's genuinely terrible. Like I said, my favorite Pixar movie is WALL-E. Love it. Least favorite, Good Dinosaur, as I'm sure you guessed. Can anything move up? Can anything move down? I think I'm honestly maybe Bug's Life up to B. Just for the pun, because there could be bees in it, because they're bugs. No, you know what? I think I'm fine leaving it as is. There we go. That's the Pixar tier list, everybody. Make a tier list of your own and share it with me. I think I've got my Twitter linked in the description below. If not, I'll put it there. In which case, just click on that and send it to me. I'd love to see what your guys' tier lists look like. I'd love to see what you thought of mine. If you think I'm a goddamn moron. If you think I'm a genius. Which, if you think I'm a genius for making a tier list, you are a peach. I appreciate you, but you should probably not idolize people that... You probably shouldn't think people are geniuses for dragging things onto a thing to rank them based off their opinion. Anyways, that's the video, everybody. Thank you very much for watching and bearing with me this week. I've been dealing with a lot of stuff. I started my own business this week as well on top of all this stuff, so it's been really, really hectic. So I appreciate the support and the patience while I get this stuff sorted out. Good stuff to come. This was good fun to make. If you want to see more of these, let me know in the comment section below, and I will see you all next time. Goodbye.